location's a little different, and it is another go round of Thursdays with Niko. And what we're going to do over the next little while is we're going to talk about Open Cup. We're going to talk about MLS, some rivalries, some not. And we're going to do it for the next half hour before Niko has to go and do other stuff. That's the official words. What we'll do is we'll go over what happened in Open Cup, and I know it was a bit of a shocker. And we'll go over the week that was. We'll do our standard round of yellow light, red light, green light, not necessarily in that order. But find out who Niko has on the good list, who Niko's got on the bad list, who Niko has kind of on the list. And we'll see what he thinks about what's going on in the middle of the afternoon. So afternoon, D. Graham, and thanks for hanging out. I apologize for the setup. I'm having a bit of multitask, as you can tell by the golf shirt. I had to do some high school stuff, and so now that I'm literally in the beauty of here. Let me show you where we are. Edit Bay. And it's the beauty of not being plugged in. Edit Bay at Georgia Public Broadcasting, after having done another round of the Football Fridays in Georgia podcast. That'll come up in just a little bit. Talk to a couple of coaches involved in their new teams. So it was really fun. It was really fun to catch up with them. It'll be out maybe later this week, and so we'll see what happens there. But any questions that are on the board, that is all up to you and all up to what Niko wants to talk about over the next 28 minutes. Because man's a very, very busy man. You thought I was a busy man. Niko's a busy man out on the West Coast, and that's why we like to have him pop up every single time that we can do stuff like this and catch up with everybody, find out what they think about what's going on in Major League Soccer. I know that with Niko, we like his perspective about what he sees from the West about what's going on in the East, and so we'll catch up with Niko when he pops in here in just a little bit, and then we'll go through all the juice boxes and get you ready for the weekend from his perspective. Tomorrow morning on the morning show, it is as normal as it gets. 9 o'clock is the sprint with all the news of the morning to get you ready for what's going on, and then from there we end up with 9:30, our friends from Beyond Goals Mentoring. I think it's a Michael Parkhurst week. I think it is. So we'll see what happens with Michael Parkhurst and Greg Garza and our friends at Beyond Goals at 9:30. 10 o'clock is the weekend whip around. Patent pending trademark coming sooner probably rather than later, anytime hopefully fairly soon. And we'll go over all the games of the weekend. Very, very busy weekend for Atlanta United on a couple of different fronts. Friday night, go to the Flood Project Facebook page and then keep an eye and see if there are any spots available. If you can make it to Reverb at the Hard Rock, right across the street from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It is going to be a lot of fun on a lot of different fronts, and that starts there. And then you've got Charlotte, Atlanta United, and then you've got you have the Twos. And they're going up against Crown Legacy on Mother's Day at 5 o'clock. And so, because it's that time, we bring in this guy and talking stuff.
What's going on, John? Family down there. How's it going? How's everything been? Exciting week in U.S. soccer in general. Lots of headlines. The coach guillotine's already in full function. There's some headliners in terms of Joseph reaching 100. There is a first time for everything. Seattle loses at home. Lots to talk about, man. And we got U.S. Open Cup, man, with a lot of, some shockers and, some that I think we expected a little more. But I'll let you handle it, my friend. You quarterback it. I will do what I can on the other side.
All right, I will try and do my best Geno Smith impression here and see where we can go for the next 25 minutes because I know you're on a clock. Let's get into Open Cup quickly. Had a couple of cup sets. You had Pittsburgh knocking off New England. You had Birmingham knocking off Memphis 901. So you have two USL championship teams making their way through. But obviously one of the stunners happened late night day 2. Seattle does not make it through. LAG put up a number.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of those games that you were trying to figure out two things. One, how much of my young prospects can I put out there, put them in a high stakes situation, see what I have, and trust my depth of this roster with the possibility that it might not be enough against an LA Galaxy team that is desperate, a Greg Vanny that needed something to hang his hat on, and puts out a pretty stellar lineup. I mean, it's as close to a starting lineup as I would have thought he was going to play. I knew a few of those players would be part of it, but I had no idea he was going to go full force. So I think whenever we have to be balanced, right? We are media members or fans. We crucify coaches because they don't play the young guys enough or they don't rotate the squad enough. But when the results don't accompany those things, then we kill them no matter what, right? So now instead of he's not playing the kids is, oh, he doesn't care about U.S. Open Cup. No, I mean, there's got to be a balance. And for the Seattle Sounders, a team that has Raul Ruidiaz out, Kellen Rowe out, Nuhu out, Christian Roldan out, I mean, there's so many main players, they have to make a choice. And I thought that they did a good job. A lot of these young guys, I thought played great. I mean, Brian Spencer told us that he thought he was going to go into halftime up 2-1, but it just didn't quite happen that way. Missed opportunity. Or Freddie tries to put it on frame and he doesn't go in, right? Defender it gets their first, blocks it. And then the game just gets a little bit out of hand, the set pieces, transition moments. It's a 3-1 lead and then it's kind of over for you. But you get to see guys like Rothrock, who scored twice already in Open Cup. You got to see a guy like Cody Baker, who now is in a conversation to start for you against Houston this weekend. Left back's been in a position where you don't have any depth. So now, hey, this kid's been playing well. He's up to standards. He's shown us that he can live up to the moment and play beyond his years. So that's what you get when it comes to Open Cup. But I know fans want results, and I know that no matter what, you don't meet expectations whenever you get eliminated from U.S. Open Cup, but that's just what happened. However, I think this was a tactical move. It was a risk, a tactical risk that you were taking, and then it just didn't happen to go the way that you hope you wanted. I mean, look at LAFC, right? They put out all their young guns, and they were at the verge. They were a penalty kick away of getting eliminated. So now instead of Charundu doesn't care. It's like, wow, the young guys and the organization, the club trusted these young guys to win games like this. So that's kind of how sometimes we are unfair with head coaches.
Yeah, and since you mentioned head coaches, we'll go ahead and talk about the guillotine. And we are discussing the teams at the bottom of the East. No real surprise that Gerhard Struber was going. We figured it was a matter of time, considering that they're last in the conference. I get it. You had all of the issues attached to Dante Van Zier that are a part of this whole thing. And the press conference was interesting, to say the very least, especially with the words that came from the sporting director. Struber, to me, seemed like it was going to happen. We just didn't know when, but now as of Monday, we knew when.
Yeah, I mean, I was more upset about some of the statements that were put out by Struber talking about, I kind of knew I was leaving. It's like he wasn't really committed to this project, right? I mean, he just seemed like this was a stepping stone, or I don't know, a place to figure out where he wanted to be, because it just didn't seem like he wanted to just be there, right? And yes, it was the issues with how he handled the Van Zier situation in that particular moment. Fans wanted him gone, but in all reality, they're at the bottom of the East because of some of the things he was unable to do, unable to really create any positive movements offensively. I get that Luquinhas has been inconsistent. I understand that maybe Van Zier, I don't know if it was his call or whose call it was to bring him in when he didn't quite fit the system. But at the end of the day, because of everything, I think it was a reasonable decision to let him go. And like you said, we were all expecting it. And the Red Bulls, for me, are doing a disservice to this roster, to that fan base, because it just shows that there is no clear pathway on what they want to do and where they want to go.
Then we go to Chicago, and this one feels rushed. And at the same time, you say you're going to give Ezra Hendrickson time to build. You're going to be patient. We talked about it on Monday's show and on Tuesday's show after it happened. And the problems in Chicago don't really set at the feet of Ezra Hendrickson as the main part of the discussion. It's more upstairs, because you sell Jean Duran, you sell Gaga Slonina, yet the reinvestment of those funds really doesn't turn into something tangible that we can all sit there and say, okay, this was what you got in return for that. And now you have not so big Shaq making a little over $8 million. Everybody else is like $1.5 million and below, and you're not getting any production out of your DPs. And this seems more something that was, well, I'm the sporting director and we're not getting the results, so I'm just going to get rid of the coach, when probably those of us from the outside are sitting there and saying maybe the problems are more upstairs than they are on the field.
100%. I mean, look, what you just said kind of puts it all together in one shell and kind of summarizes it perfectly. I think that Ezra was put into a tough situation with some benefits, and it looks great. It's like if you're on the table and there's a guy with a hand of poker, and he says, sit down on the table, and you see $1 million in front of you. Like, man, I could win all this money. But then you look at that hand and there's nothing there for you to win with. So you just kind of sit there, because that's what he had. He had the most expensive player. So he had Ace of Hearts there, but there was nothing that was going to help him out with that Ace of Hearts, because he's been so ineffective. So the highest paid player, most uninfluential, most ineffective player in the league. A lot of things to change. A management office that decided to sell Heather Duran, bring nobody back. When we Shabilko, a guy that you knew that he wasn't the top goal scorer, he wasn't going to be your guy. Kai Kamara kind of saves you from having a little bit of offensive power. But at the end of the day, there just wasn't enough time for Ezra to, as he told us several times, he wanted to wreck it all and rebuild it. And just didn't give him the time. So it is more of a business decision taken, so I don't have to make the real decisions, which is say, hey, something in the front office isn't working.
Coming up on halftime here with Thursdays with Niko Moreno from the Soccer Bar and our friends at Pulso Sports. And we go through everything that goes on in Major League Soccer, the week that was, the week that will be, rivalries that aren't sponsored by a beer, apparently this weekend, because you do have some rivalries that are coming up. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But since it is halftime, we always have our favorite segment.
I love it.
Red light, yellow light, green light. And for those that are catching up with us for the first time, ground rules are pretty simple. Think of it as a stoplight. Think of it, like you're at the intersection and you're going, okay, I've got a green light. That means that I can go through the intersection. Everything's cool. Yellow light, you're kind of like, okay, do I hit the brakes? Do I stop? Do I go through the intersection hoping that I get through before the light turns orange, or if there isn't a cop there that's going to give me a ticket on my way through? Red light, got to stop. Everything's in trouble. So we apply that to this. And green light, folks that you give the gold star to. Yellow light could be either folks that were given the gold star that might, for some reason, you're sitting there, you're raising the people's eyebrow and you're going, hey, what's going on here? Or somebody who was really bad that might be improving and you're giving them the people's eyebrow for a different reason. And then you've got red light. And with red light, these are folks that you sit there and it's like, Kevin Bacon at the end of the parade in Animal House, where he's on the sidewalk and he's sitting there going, stay calm all as well. And it may not be the case. What we have decided is that you can give teams the designation. You can attach them to whatever light you wish, but you have to give a different reason as to why if they are a repeat nominee. So, Niko, would you like to go green light first, or would you like to go red light first this week?
Well, let's switch it up this time. Let's go green light to red light.
All right. So then your green light, sir, would be whom?
I'm going to go ahead and go with Bruce Arena and the New England Revolution. Yes, they're coming in from a loss. I get it. But in MLS play against Toronto, he showed me that he can modify his team. After losing a guy like Dylan, it seemed to obviously affect his overall potential. But with the roster that he's been able to build, with his ability to use Carlos Hill the way that amplifies his best attributes, with Gustavo Bo, with Botan, with Blessing, a lot of these experienced players like Pauster. I mean, it just seems that he has found the right combination to have the best chance to win every game. They're not going to be electric. They're not going to be amazing. They're not going to be unbelievable, or they're not going to possess the ball all the time, and they're not going to, their volume of play or their XG is not going to be off the roof, but they're going to win. They're going to be effective. They're going to find a way to win it. They're going to, at times, are going to play a little bit deeper. They're going to find ways to get numbers forward. They're going to use the speed that they have with their wingbacks or their fullbacks, right? And they're going to be able to get games going. So I have to praise Bruce Arena for just understanding the roster and provided them with the confidence that regardless of who's out there, we're going to win every game. They're obviously one of the top teams in the East, and because of that, I'm going to go ahead and put them in that green light category.
All right, so that means that the next light is the yellow light at our SDH Thursdays with Niko stoplight, our four-way intersection here. So then who is your yellow light this week and why?
I'm going to give you a yellow light that if something doesn't change, it's going to go red. And it's a team that I was high on and that I know you don't like, and it's that purple team. Orlando is starting to worry me. It's starting to concern that those players who you brought in and that had us with so high expectations, maybe they're never going to find their cohesiveness with your other star players, right? So Facundo Torres and Ojeda and Angulo, it just doesn't seem to be working. Cara, he's probably just as unpredictable and inconsistent as Araujo at times. He just doesn't find consistency within his own game. There's Enrique, there's all of this talent offensively, and yet using zero of it. Statistically, they're one of the worst offensive teams in the league. So to me, that's a problem. So I'm going to leave him at yellow because they have an Oscar Pareja that for me is one of the top coaches in the league. But that if there is no way for you to utilize all the talent that you brought in, and Maguire is going to be your go-to guy up top, I think there's issues. I think there's problems. And if they can't figure it out this week, I'm going to have to bump him down to red. So tune in next week. We'll talk about it.
All right. So now that you have given the downward swinging yellow to the purple team in Orlando City. All right. So hit me with the red light this week. And who's in the red light district for the bad reason, sir?
All right. Well, that's an easy one. We just talked about him. Is the New York Red Bulls. This is a team that right after losing their coach, it might not be a huge deal because they have a curriculum that's followed. You could be up there in the bench and I could be up there and they're going to play the exact same way. But I do feel that there is a problem within the locker room of confidence of who's going to be our leader, where this organization's going. I thought that from when Stewart was part of this whole thing and the issues that happened with Benzier, that locker room was already breaking. And any athlete, any soccer player will tell you that wins hide a lot of cracks in the foundation. But when you're at the bottom of the league, when you're at the bottom of the conference and you continue to lose, those cracks get exposed and they might even get bigger and break completely everything that you have going for yourself. So regardless of being a team that defensively, I think is decent and can make their platform to be a mid-table club, I just think that the problems with the front office, I think the problems with what they want to do, their misses on DPs and the issues with players today, make it really difficult for me to foresee them starting to climb up that totem pole.
That's your red light, yellow light, and green light. We need a sponsor, like maybe the Washington Department of Transportation. I think that's what we need.
I like that. Get put that out there.
Get the WDOT to sponsor that particular segment. But that's red light, yellow light, green light, go for another go round here on Thursdays with Niko. And so that means that for the remainder of the time this week, it is time to look at your juice boxes. And for the matches that are upcoming, rivalry or otherwise, not sponsored by a beer that has a red star attached to it, that is a green bottle. And what we like to do here, for those once again watching for the first time, is we like to present the games and present them with an analysis and desire of, if a game sucks, we're not going to talk about it. If a game is worth talking about, Niko will sit there and he will say stop, and we will talk about it, and we will run our way through it. But as we always give our juice boxes, we always tell you, make sure that it is juice boxes that you can afford not to drink through the straw. That if it's a juice box at the back of the fridge that you don't like, that has an expiration date that was 2018, those kinds of juice boxes, that's what we're hunting for here. Always be careful when it comes to your juice boxes as we analyze the games coming up. So on Saturday, we actually have a 1 o'clock Eastern time start. Thank you, secondary television broadcast carrier. Chicago and St. Louis. And this one is at Soldier Field. New coach bounce, maybe, because the Fire are a minus 103. St. Louis and the draw basically within the margin of error at a plus 265. St. Louis has kind of hit the wall recently, and it will be an interesting rivalry here with the Midwest. What do you think about this early kick?
I want to talk about this because I have a gut feeling that St. Louis in the Let's Run It Back Bowl, because they just played, are going to find a way to beat this Chicago team, which was interesting to see a team like St. Louis that doesn't want the ball, doesn't want to possess it, beat Chicago in possession, very likely because that's what Klopas wanted. Clearly simplifying everything, very direct, 4-2-3-1, in which they were going to take very little passes. They were going to try to get it over the top whenever they would get a chance to transition. But I think that Cornell has enough of an idea of who might he be able to pair up with Gioacchini up top and make him more effective. So I think in this one, it's more of a gut feeling, to be quite frank, but I would take St. Louis visiting on this one. Put it on. I'm going to check it out.
All right. Atlanta United starts your 7:39 kicks, courtesy of our friends at Apple TV. Atlanta United hosting a Charlotte team that is hurting. And as we say here in the South, if somebody's really hurting, it usually is N apostrophe, HURTIN apostrophe. They are hurting. You won't have Derek Jones or Enzo Capetti because of yellow card accumulation. Joe Zviak is coming off a groin injury. Melanda and two others are fighting injuries themselves. Atlanta United a decided favorite at a minus 169. Charlotte north of plus 400.
I don't want to touch it for many reasons. One, the numbers. Two, it seems like every single time I'm high on a bounce back game for Gonzalo and Atlanta, I swing and a miss. That Inter Miami game was just tough to watch because it seemed like Atlanta was in some ways controlling possession, but without a purpose. They couldn't really get connections and services in the way they wanted. And then in a couple of chances, Joseph just turns it around and pulls that knife that he believed he had in his heart and then stuck it right back at Atlanta. So it was honestly interesting to watch because Atlanta had their own issues, right? With injuries, including Araujo, who couldn't start this one. In the midfield, clearly. I thought Rossetto played better when he came on, but still just a lot of problems for Atlanta. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there. However, I'm not going to touch that game in terms of numbers because both teams are on the slumps, to be quite frank, especially Charlotte with all the injuries that they have. I mean, all the absences that they have. So we could just move on. But I did want to put that out there.
Then let me ask you this, and this is a question that has come up on the morning show with our friends on the Twitch pitch. What is the conversation like there in Seattle about the job that Gonzalo Pineda is doing? I know that you had a conversation with him recently on the network out there. What is the vibe out there about the job that Gonzalo is doing here in Atlanta?
I think over here is very positive. Obviously, they're not inclined. They're not as embedded with the results and how it might hurt to be eliminated from an Open Cup, and everything that Gonzalez had to deal with, that roller coaster of emotions and success that he's had down there. Because you can't really say that he's been a prodigy right as soon as he came on, but I think everyone knows that the end game for a guy like Gonzalo will be a positive one. So with the start of the season for Atlanta, that maybe was a little bit make up over a couple of fantastic Almada games that might have saved some of those points and stuff. Overall, the fan base here in Seattle, players, everything around these hallways, everybody seems to be very high on what Gonzalo Pineda is doing.
Okay, let me go through the other 7:30s. No fans, no away fans allowed at Stade Saputo for CF Montreal and Toronto FC because of fights between ultras at BMO Field on the midweek during Canadian Championship. And you've also had a thrown megaphone from the Capo stand at Mark Anthony K. So we had those moments happen this past week. They're playing again this weekend. No visiting fans allowed in just a wild scenario north of the border.
Yeah, that's unacceptable. I saw that whole thing. It was just, I feel like it's unexcusable when fans feel like because they are supporters and they feel some sort of way they can yell certain things or aggravate a player, whether it's with abusive language or physically. So that's just sad. This one, also not one of my favorite games here, but obviously Montreal is on a high. It seems like Bryce Duke was the missing piece in Montreal, and now let's just call him Bryce Messi because he's just doing it all down there. And they're getting some traction, right? And Lozada finally able to put out a couple of decent results. But one, I'm not watching that game, and two, I think it's pretty clear that Montreal, with the momentum against a Toronto team that seems to have no answers, regardless of some of those quality players they have, they're probably going to take this game.
Other 7:30s, it is Crew and the Purple Team, DC and Nashville, Inter Miami and the Revs, and Hudson River. What sticks out in those 7:30s?
Yeah. Again, some rivalry games that I think are diminished by some of the situations down there. I think the Orlando Columbus is interesting just because of what I mentioned about Orlando being this yellow team that could turn red, and a Columbus squad that dominated Miami. They had possession, they had the opportunities, but ended up losing that game. Now they got a week of rest. Cucho got a week of rest. Celara John, this team that with Mohamed Farsi, continues to grow as a right wing back, and I love what obviously is being done at the coaching level with all these young players. So I think this is an interesting one. And then Orlando, can they figure it out? Can they be able to figure out what's going on with Facundo Torres? Can we maybe simplify things? I thought that whenever you don't ask Facundo Torres to do as much defensively or move around more, and you just give him a little bit of freedom, maybe with like a double pivot of center defensive midfielders like Cartagena and Araujo, they just work a little. He works a little bit better. So I want to see what kind of adjustments Oscar Pereira is going to do, because that Open Cup title last season gave him some cushion, but I think that seed might start getting hot if he doesn't get a good result here against against Columbus.
8:30 Eastern, so 8:39 kicks. You've got Copa Tejas, Austin, and FC Dallas. Houston hosting Seattle Sounders, who are a dog at a plus 185. Sporting at home, favored after the win over Seattle last week. They're a minus 106 hosting Minnesota, who's a plus 279.
Oof. I like that Seattle game at Houston. Yes, Houston has yet to concede a goal at home. Yes, they're undefeated at home. They have a good squad that could maybe exploit some of the absences that Seattle might have for this one. I thought it was interesting once again that maybe Cody Baker gets to start this game per Brian Smetzer. So that could kind of move things around. But I think Seattle going into this one after losing midweek, they're going to make this a statement to the league of saying, hey, let's slow it down. We lost to Sporting Kansas City, but we're still a top dog. So I would take my money on this Seattle Sounders team going into Houston. I think we're going to see a little bit of what's worked in the past with Jordan Morris at the 9, Niko right below him, Leo Chu out left, and maybe we see Dobbelair out right. But I think that Seattle going into this game is going to make it a point to win it. It's not going to be easy, but I would take that game.
Late games, Colorado hosting Philadelphia. So Philadelphia is going to have to fight the altitude, the Prairie Dogs, and the Rapids. RSL and LAFC. LAFC is favored on the road at a plus 131 after taking their middle school squad to play Monterey Bay in the midweek. And Cascadia, Portland, and Vancouver. Those are your late games on Saturday.
What's the draw in Real Salt Lake?
Plus 252.
I'll take the draw on that one. I'll take the draw at Real Salt Lake for sure. How about the Tejas Cup? What are the numbers on that real quick?
It is Austin at home is a plus 122. Your draw is a plus 246. FCD is a plus 214.
214 for Dallas?
Uh-huh.
Let me get Dallas. And what's the over-under on goals?
All right, so let's check over-under and see what we can come up with a particular total.
Because that's an interesting one. I mean, Austin's been known right now for just giving a whole bunch of goals. They're starting to figure out a little bit more in terms of the attacking end. Love to see one of my favorite moments last weekend, by the way, Will Bruin scoring at the 90-plus minute. Just made my heart giggle. So this might be an interesting one for goals. And I think Dallas pulls a rabbit out of their hat and do a number on Austin.
All right, so your over-under at 2.5 is a minus 110. Here's where it flips. Your 3.5 is a plus 225.
Give me 3.5. 3.5 in Dallas on this one.
There you go.
I'm gonna lock it in.
There's your lock it in parlay. I feel like Scott Farrell. Lock it in parlay of the week. And so your Cali Classico is the only game late night Sunday East Coast time. LAG is favored at a minus 116. San Jose coming to Carson is a plus 290.
I'm taking San Jose in that one. I think the LA Galaxy really pushed the limit of that roster. Yes, it's an extra day, and I know that Brian mentioned that they were going to get an extra day, but I really think they are underestimating this San Jose team that just beat LAFC, that is so true to their form, and that can really. I know there's no Cowell in this one because he's out with the U20, but I really do think that with what Luchi Gonzalez is doing in San Jose, they could pull this game off.
All right, what's going on with Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports for the next 7 days?
All right, well, at Soccer Bar, just go ahead and as soon as I get off here, I'm going to hop on Soccer Bar on YouTube. Go ahead and check that out. We'll be talking about Open Cup. We're going to be talking about what's next here for this upcoming week. And we might have a little surprise for you guys next week, but I won't give it to you guys just yet. And at Pulso Sports, just everything that just happened with the Seattle Sounders in Up and Cup. We had an interview with Javier Arriaga as well, someone that's obviously dealing with a situation where he was the starter. Now he's fighting to get that spot back. Interesting one in Spanish there at Pulso Sports.
What he said. So he's got to hop from this show and he's going to go host another one. So Niko, get out of here. We'll catch up with you next week, my friend.
You the man, baby. Take it easy, guys.
End of the show. That means we get to do this.